So in the previous session, we discussed alerts, basically their soft notifications. So on this session, we will review validations. Think about what validations are. It completely stops the user from continuing on until they make a change. So obviously Salesforce has validation rules, but in CPQ, we should always use product rules with a validation type for situations where we would need to have this validation. So I want to talk about a potential use case in our bento box scenario. So let's say the requirement is we want the sales reps to capture the payment type. So they are selling to schools, and so they may have a grant program uh, where the pricing is reduced drastically, or they may get things for free, or the payment may be the customer is actually going to be the one paying. So they need to capture this information before the quote is saved. And so that's what we're going to demonstrate today and set up in our Salesforce environment. So coming back to our product rules, we're going to select a new product rule. And title it require payment type. But let's keep in mind, like, do we have any information right now on the quote or the quote line to capture this? No, we don't. So what we would have to do is first, before we set up a product rule, we need to make sure that we have all of our necessary fields in place. So I'm going to go to fields and relationship. And I'm going to click on Object Manager, search for quote line, because this is the object that we want to have this data on, mainly because on the quote line, like, you may have multiple products. So the customer may use a grant for one product and may have self payment for another product. So we want to capture like which quote line will have a certain payment type. So we'll click on fields and relationship, add a new product. Add a new field. And then we want to make this a pick list. Click on next, because we want to have the sales rep select from some options. So labeling it payment type, we're going to click on enter value. So we want to add the values that should be displayed on our pick list. Okay, so we have grant and customer payment. So those are our pick list values. Let's click on next. We want it to be visible for all profiles, so we'll click on next. We do want it to be on the quote layout, so let's click save. Okay. Then we also want it to appear on the field set, right? On the quote line, so that the sales reps can actually select it. So we'll click on line editor. We'll search for payment type, and we'll add it here, maybe after the end date. And let's click save. So just based off of what we've just done, I just want to show you where we have added that so far without adding any rules. So I'll just add the standard bento box. All right, and as you can see here, we have a new field, payment type, grant or customer paid. Okay. All right, so we have what we need to set this up so far. So going back to our product rule, so we are going to label this require payment type. And if you want to be more specific, we can say on quote line, make it as active. The type again is validation because we're selecting a validation. The conditions, for now, we're just going to select all. So let's ask ourselves, where should this scope be? Should it be at the quote, which is the quote line editor, which is what I just showed you here, the quote line editor? Or should it be on the product, which is the product configuration screen, right? So in our case, we want it to be quote because we want it to be on the quote line editor. That's where we want that error message to show. All right, so the next important thing is the error message. So whatever message you want to be displayed, you'll type in the error message. Payment type is required. The evaluation event, we want this to be on save. We don't want this to fire every single time the sales rep may make an edit on the quote line editor, right? So if they're entering a quantity, we don't want it to continuously show up. So we may want to just have it on save. So when they save the record, it will appear. The evaluation order, we can set this as 20. Since our first rule was 1. And that's all we need to get us started. But now we do need to set a condition because if we don't, it'll fire all the time, every time it's saved, irregardless if the sales rep has entered a value on the payment type or not. So on the error condition object related list to this product rule, we'll click on new. The index will have as 10. This is our first error condition for this particular rule. The object that we want to look at is the quote line, right? So we've added that field on the quote line, but there's one more thing we need to take a look at. So the tested field. So this new field won't be here. I've added payment type, the API name here. You always have to add your API name. So you would go to error conditions. Let me just go here so that I can make it clear. So we would go to error conditions, fields in relationship, and the field that we are looking for is tested field on the error condition object. So we'll click on tested field. As you can see, I've added the API name, payment type of the field that's on the quote line. So you would want to go to the quote line, get the API name of that new field that you just created, and then you need to come to the error condition object, the tested field, and add this pick list value. And then in addition to that, you also need to change the controlling field. So here, clicking here, I've already added it, but when you go to add it, the payment type will be grayed out. It won't be yellow. So all you need to do is double click on payment type and then click save. And then you're all set. Keep in mind when you do add when you do add this, update this dependency, right? This pick list value to be dependent on the quote line object, which is selected, you always need to just refresh your page because you'll wonder, well, why is it not showing up? I don't see it, and I know I've added it. Please refresh your page. It will show up. So clicking on payment type, and what we're looking for is for it to equal, like for them not to have made a selection, okay? And so in this case, we want the operator to be equals value blank. We need to keep the filter value blank. So what this is telling us is that this is going to fire if that pick list value is blank, if the user has not selected grant as a pick list value, or if they have not selected customer pay. So then we'll click on save. All right, now we're ready to make some changes. So let's just delete these lines, save this quote back out of it, come back in just to make sure that all of the new logic will get applied. So now we'll add the product. We can add the standard bento box in this situation. And as you can see here, the payment type is blank. So if I were to do a quick save or save, this would come up. This payment is required. So if I selected grant and let's select it for each line here. You can always have an automation to copy if needed. You could copy the values from that you've added to the bundle product and copy it down to the child products if that was a requirement. But for right now, we'll just populate them manually, and we'll click on quick save. And as you can see, the error message goes away. Okay. And you can just save the quote at this point. So that concludes our session on product rules with a validation as a type.